none, what we have tonight is the overall draft of the proposed budget, and Mayor Britton will be giving us the presentation of what to expect.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and this is the start of our budget process, and I'll just go just briefly through the entire budget and some of the objectives in it and some of the requests, and one thing that I can say is we don't have all the answers in some of the issues that we have, and so this is also a fluid document. And what I mean by that is that it'll change as you make changes and as we get more information on different issues. One issue that you'll see will be pay, employee pay, and so that'll be something that we'll address later in the process. Let's see. First, let's talk about the economy and the community, and our economy is very healthy. But we do face some economic challenges as far as what inflation is bringing and the supply chain issues, and one is wage pressures, and we're facing that as an employer, as a county government, losing some good employees to other employers because of pay. We have fuel issues. You'll see in the budget document where in every department we've estimated increases for fuel. In heavy equipment, truck repairs, you've seen that in budget amendments in the last month or so, and we've increased some areas there. In food costs for inmate meals, we'll talk about that some, and medical costs as well for employee insurance and inmate medical. Since we went self-insured about 6 years ago, we haven't had to raise premiums during that entire time. So we've been able to save millions of dollars during that period, and so we need to look at revenue going into insurance fund, and then vehicle delivery. We're still waiting on the vehicles that we ordered last. It was either August or September, and that were in this year's budget. So there's some issues there. As far as the economy, our unemployment is back to pre-COVID levels, actually under pre-COVID levels at 3.1% in March. And so we peaked right at COVID in April of 2020 at 15.3%, last year at 3.9%, and we're right around 3% now. As far as our manufacturing sector, Morristown and Hamilton County, 1 out of every 4 jobs is in manufacturing, and we have 5 companies currently here that are planning expansions this year. If most of them are already underway, not all of them. A couple of them have just been approved by the City Industrial Board. About $255 million in investment and 255 jobs. We're having visits from a lot of U.S. companies because we have our industrial parks already have lots that are ready for companies to locate. And Marshall Ramsey, our industrial recruiter, tells me that there aren't many foreign companies that are looking to expand into the United States right now because of the shutdown. They've been shut down longer than we have, and so they haven't ramped back up. We have 2 announcements that are pending, and that'll happen in the next month or so. And as we all know, there's hundreds of jobs available. And I put a picture in here of the Howmet. I saw that today. It was on a billboard on Morris Boulevard, and so they're looking for employees. An update on Van Hool, which is the bus manufacturer. They are one of the companies that are affected by the shutdown in Europe and the, I guess, slow growth or slow return of the tourism trade. And so right now their construction is not scheduled to start till 24, maybe 25. They do own the property that the plant will be located on. They're paying taxes on it. but right now they've delayed construction of their plant. TCAT, which this commission invested in, the expansion of TCAT has already, I guess, benefited our recruiting efforts as far as jobs go. There have been multiple prospects that have come and have seen the facility and what's being taught there and the equipment that's there, and it's made a couple of companies choose Morristown, and so we're really proud of that. It's finished. If you haven't been inside, I invite you to go visit, and the pictures that you see are the CNC machines and the HVAC area. They also have a tremendous welding laboratory, and it's really something that we as a community should be proud of. Also, Suzanne Cox, who started working over 20 years ago at TCAT in the bookstore, was named president of TCAT Morristown just about a month ago, and Suzanne's will do a great job. As far as transportation goes, just to update you on a couple of state projects. Of course, Route 66, the connector from Exit 4 off 81 to 160 is open, of course, and benefiting our area. 11E, which is out that runs right by Molly, it's the right-of-way acquisition is almost done. There's in the process of moving the last few businesses, and it is in the state's 3-year plan. It's in year 2 for funding for construction in year 23-24. And then at the intersection of 25E and the entrance to the East Tennessee Progress Center, that intersection is going to be redesigned by TDOT, and it will eliminate that middle area where vehicles get stuck some, and it's because of the growth of traffic that's going to happen to ETPC with Van Hool and other companies that are locating in the industrial park. Residential growth, we all know how many homes are being built, both single family and multifamily. We're at the city planning and development director Steve Nielsen told me today that we're at a 5-year high as far as planned single family homes. We have a lot of homes under construction right now, and then there's 3 new subdivisions that are just in the planning stage, and so haven't been approved yet by the city planning office. But there's a lot of demand out there, and a lot of activity in the housing. We conducted a survey similar to the one we did a year ago. It's not a scientific survey. It was just a survey that we promoted on social media, and the newspaper promoted it for us, and we had it on our website just to get some community feedback about county services, and so on a scale of, it was ranked on a scale of 1 to 5, and 5 being the highest, and just want to show you a few of the results. As far as importance of county services and what our citizens think are the most important, education was number 1, roads was number 2, law enforcement was number 3, and then garbage collection was number 4. So those were, as far as importance, what was important to them or what is important to them, those are the top 4. And then as far as satisfaction goes, garbage is number 1. It was the highest ranking. And I think maybe part of it is we have door-to-door garbage pickup. And we're, the only county in Tennessee that has door-to-door garbage pickup from all across the county. Education, number 2. Election administration, number 3, and the library and sheriff's department was number 4 as far as satisfaction goes. And then as far as spending, where the respondents want you to spend the county's money is or more money. It was, we added, the way the question was asked is, do you want to spend more, the same, or less on these different areas? And the area that the respondents wanted more money spent, number one was roads, and number two was veteran services. And I'm not sure if what we spend on veteran services is having Tim Williams, our veteran service officer, in the office 4 days a week. And but all the benefits come from from VA, from the federal government. So that might not be crystal clear to all the respondents. Law enforcement was next, spending more on law enforcement, and then education. And then as far as where does the respondents, where do they get their information about county government? Number one was social media. Number two was from the county website. 3 was from other services, and 4 was the newspaper. So we were interested in knowing where they get their information. Okay, as far as the budget process, we started this back in February when we distributed the budget documents to all the county departments, and they submitted their budget requests by the 1st of March. We compiled that data and met with all the departments in April and started putting the document together in May. And then we'll have budget meetings this month and next month and adopt the budget in June. As far as our budget structure and our fund structure, county government follows fund accounting, and we have the different funds that finance different functions. The general fund is Fund 101. You'll hear us talk about Fund 101, or you see it on your budget amendments. And that's the general fund that's where the budgets for most of the county departments are. And you have the school system has its own fund, that's 141. Debt service has a fund of its own at 151. Sanitation is 116. Highway operations, the operations of the highway department is Fund 131. The drug fund is 122. Then you have a highway capital projects fund, and that's 176. So we'll talk about budgets for each of these different funds, and that's how we'll break it out. And the one that you'll spend the most time on, of course, is the general fund 101, which its largest department in 101 is the sheriff's department, jail, and all those related departments. As far as sources of revenue for county governments, it's kind of limited. You basically have the big 3, and that's property tax, sales tax, and wheel tax. You have fees also collected largely through the court system. Business tax is part of that. The state board bill, what we call the state board bill, which is what the state pays us for housing state prisoners, is among those fees. We have some state grants. We have an increase of 1 grant this coming year that we'll talk about. And then you have a little bit of federal money through state agencies, but not a whole lot of it. And so those are the sources of revenue. In our property tax, the way the property tax rate is divided, you have an inside and outside rate. Inside, what we mean by that is property within the city of Morristown pays 1 rate. Property that is outside the city limits pays another rate, because that higher rate, the $1.97, includes garbage collection. The city of Morristown provides garbage collection for its citizens, and those folks pay city taxes for that. And then the county, of course, offers garbage collection for its residents, and 21 cents of that rate goes to garbage collection. At the bottom of this slide, you have what a penny will bring in. A penny on the tax rate generates about $156,000 countywide. And then for the garbage rate, or any tax outside the city, just on property outside the city, will generate about $61,000. Here's a graph that I use every year just to show you how we compare with other communities in East Tennessee. This is a chart of combined property tax rates for cities and counties. And this year we're the third lowest. Last year we were the second lowest. And lots of time, since I've been using this, and I'll have to credit the city of Morristown, that's where I get this chart from Tony Cox and his folks, is we've always been second or third. So we're in the lower part of property tax rates in East Tennessee. As far as our tax history, now what this chart shows, or this graph shows, is a total tax roll. The total tax roll for next year will be somewhere around $30 million. And so we've just kind of seen a gradual growth over time. And like 2021, this year, 21, 22, and 22, 23 is the same tax rate. And what that reflects is growth in the tax base. And it's just been a steady growth. In 1920, that was a reappraisal year, and so that you saw an increase there. But this 3 years, including the budget that we'll be talking about the next few weeks, shows a slight increase in property tax money that's generated. In sales tax, the way sales tax works is the first 50 cents of every local sales tax dollars goes to the school system. That's by state law. This year, we're estimating the school system will receive $18,355,000 in sales tax dollars. That's more than was budgeted for them, and it's about $1.4 million more than last year. So that's about an 8.6% increase. Pardon? 1.4 million, and it's tremendous growth in sales tax. And then the second 50 cents for local sales tax goes to the government where the sales tax was collected. Like if it's at a brick and mortar store inside the city of Morristown, let's say a grocery store, then that second 50 cents goes to the city of Morristown. Let's say it was collected at a general dollar store that's out in the county, then that second 50 cents goes to the county. And this table right here shows where we budget that second 50 cents. The bulk of it goes to garbage collection. But then we also, there's a little bit of sales tax that's collected for communications that's in the general fund. There's an amount in highway that we've kept the same since 2018. There's a little bit that goes into debt service, but the bulk of it goes into solid waste. And the health of our solid waste fund, our sanitation fund, shows the increase in sales tax, and we'll show that to you later in the presentation. Here's a graph that shows you about the growth in sales tax, and you can see in 1920 it grew a little bit from 1819, but then the COVID year of 2021 is when it really grew or started growing, and that's because of the change in the state law and how internet sales tax is distributed. And that second 50 cents goes to the government where the package is delivered. So most of the internet sales is done and delivered at homes. And so those purchases, the sales tax from those purchases will go, and most of the residential property is outside the city of Morristown. So that's why we saw a big increase in sales tax collections, was because of internet sales tax. And so, and this year we're anticipating receiving a total of over $20 million in sales tax. And we're budgeting a little less than that, just to be conservative. The next slide is the general fund, the fund balance of the general fund, and you'll see how it's grown over the last several years. This year we expect to finish the year with a fund balance of $11.8 million. and which is a growth of about $1.3 million, almost $1.4 million in fund balance in the general fund. And that's the largest that we've ever had. And so what's helped us with that is property tax growth, as we've talked about. We also received the $500,000 in the state local government grant money, which we budgeted for capital purchases this year. And then we also received a grant from the state that helped offset some of our costs in manpower and equipment for mental health transports and among other monies. But those are just some things that I can point to on the revenue side. Then on the expenditure side, we've spent, if you take the 1.3 million that's listed on this slide, it's about 6.5% of the budget. So we spent about 93.5% of what was budgeted, and the rest will go into fund balance. So
That growth in there from 2020 to 2021, what was that? What was that growth?
that was the COVID year. That was when
That sales tax,
a lot of sales tax, property tax. We were very conservative in our budget for property tax, and because we didn't know what COVID would do to property tax payments, and they didn't miss a beat.
you've
So
seen a bigger growth in that since you've been in office,
in what?
2020, 2021.
Oh, that's the greatest. That's the biggest increase in fund balance we've ever had. Yeah. And we also didn't travel during COVID. We didn't do much travel. So we didn't spend as much money during that period either. Okay, this is the year that we're in now and how we're going to finish. Let's see if I'm right here. Yes. And the 1.3 million growth in surplus takes our fund balance to 11.8. So our percentage of fund balance is 56%. And we have an unwritten policy that we've followed through the years that we try to maintain a 25% fund balance. 25% of the appropriation is what we try to maintain. And I think the lowest that we've had has been around 16, 17%. And so we're at 56% now. And then, so that's what we anticipate finishing this year. So that kind of sets the stage for the 22-23 budget. And this is the kind of an overview of the 22-23 general fund budget. Revenues are down about $457,000, and that's within $100,000 of the local government grant money. So that reflects the local government grant money. So the state legislature did not appropriate those funds for counties this year, and so there's none in the revenue side of the budget. Also, we did not budget the American Rescue Plan funds. That's the spending plan is before you in this week's meeting, and so it's not budgeted. We will budget it as the expenditures take place. Expenses are down about $20,000 from budget to budget, and right now with the way the budget stands, there's about a deficit of about $1.1 million, and about $400,000 of that is capital projects. One you'll see is the new phone system, which has been budgeted for a couple of years using local government grant money that the state gave us, and we bid that, and we're right now working through those responses, and we'll have a recommendation to you next month on the phone system. Yes, sir.
I remember that phone system. Isn't there a certain time we have to do that by though?
That's the American Rescue money, not the local government grant money. We have to have it committed by December of '24, the federal money. And it has to be spent by December of '26. Now, Tim, the money that we're going to use for the phone system was from the very first local government grant money, which was $1 million. All right, there were no strings attached to that at all. Now, the one that we received this year, the $500,000, we had to have committed by the end of June. We did. One thing, I don't get too excited about the deficit. You know, you look at the $1.1 million deficit, and I don't get too excited about that because that is using the assumption that we spend every penny. And we're very conservative on the revenue side. If we, I just played with some numbers today, and if we spend 95% of what's budgeted, then that will leave about $1.1 million left. So, and that's assuming that revenues don't come in higher than what we anticipated. But the year that we're in now, when we adopted the budget, we had a deficit of about $600,000, and we're expecting a surplus of over $1 million this year. So that's the way we've budgeted through the years. It's just been very conservative on the revenue side, and that's paid dividends for us. Okay, any questions to that point? I'm getting ready to get into more of the meat of the general fund. Under operations, as far as the expenditures, there's a new employee for recovery court. It's a male caseworker. Our recovery court coordinator is a female. So for us to continue to expand the program, we need a male for drug testing and that kind of thing. And the state has promised us $40,000 more for our recovery court grant. Currently, it's at $60,000. They've promised us $100,000 to cover about 2/3 of the cost of this position. So, so that's one of the items on the expenditure side. Another is the judicial commissioners for general sessions for Judge Collins that you approved this halfway through this year. And the budget includes funding for all year for 3 full-time and 2 part-time. And I was talking to Judge Collins about this last night, and he's having trouble keeping people. And it pays $15 an hour, except for the graveyard shift is $16 an hour, and he's having trouble keeping folks for that position. There's $73,000 for increase for fuel for the Sheriff's Department. In this budget, we continue our contribution to the Jail to Work program. It's $90,000. The budget for Jail to Work with McNabb Center is about $250,000, $260,000. So we pay 90% or $90,000 of that. And money that they've raised within the community takes care of the rest of it, as well as other state grants. We have 3 elections in this coming fiscal year. We have the August general election, local general election. You have the November, and then it's a state primary, and then you have the state general election in November. Then you have the city election in May, and we get reimbursed by the city for their election in May. The medical examiner's office is being reorganized. Coroner Eddie Davis is retiring after 31 years on the job, and so our medical examiner, Dr. Tom Thompson, is wanting, well, Eddie's the last coroner in Tennessee. Nobody else has a coroner. And so the trend is death investigators. And so Dr. Thompson wants to go to death investigators, and so that's, there's some shifting of money around in that budget, and it'll take about $5,100 to get through that transition. Commissioner Doty asked that we increase our volunteer fire departments by $20,000 each, so we included that in the budget for you to talk about. So right now, we give each department $55,000, and this would take them to $75,000 each, and help them with some of their insurance payments, and hopefully reduce their time that they have to
Diesel
spend
fuel
on
cost.
fundraising.
Diesel fuel cost right now.
Yeah,
It's
and
killing
that's
them.
true. Diesel fuel cost. That's true. And then inmate food. We're in the third year of a contract with Trinity Food Services, and they we have corrections officers on staff who work in the kitchen. They're the kitchen staff along with some of the prisoners, but the folks who prepare the menus, who do I guess we buy the food from, they provide the recipes, is Trinity, and it has reduced our cost of food. And this is year 3, and this is the first time that they've increased the price. Under the contract, there's a cost of an escalation clause tied to CPI, and they didn't implement it last year, and this year they are. So a meal will be going to $1.03. And one thing that one action we've taken to try to keep our corrections officers is starting the 1st of May, starting the 1st of this month, we started providing corrections officers 1 meal per shift. And it's not the same food that the prisoners eat. It's a different menu, and so I don't know how that's been, how the officers have responded to it, but that's something that we've offered to try to keep our turnover among corrections officers down. On our capital expenses, the new phone system, we talked about $150,000 there. 6 mobile data terminals for the detectives' vehicles for the sheriff's department. Mobile data terminals are the computers that are mounted in their vehicles. 2 new pickup trucks for the sheriff's department. A used pickup for the maintenance department. A pickup truck that can pull a trailer. It'll be a pretty good size heavy-duty pickup that can pull one of the big trailers that they use for emergency operation centers for emergency management. And then 3 to 5 HVAC units for our maintenance department that'll be used at various county buildings. We budget 3 to 5 every year, and in previous years we budgeted $20,000. This year we went to 25, just because of the cost of the units has increased. And then we budgeted $50,000 for architectural and construction engineering services, and this is for 2 or 3 projects. One is the balconies on the first north side of the historic building are showing their age of 100+ years, and we need a structural engineer to evaluate what needs to be done to shore those up, and so we've budgeted money for that. The maintenance staff has moved from the building directly across the street to the Hale House. The building should be demolished hopefully this weekend, the old maintenance building, but they don't have anywhere to do their welding or to do any work like that. They don't have a workshop, which they had in the basement of the old building. So we will be presenting to you a proposal to buy a prefabricated building and put electricity in it and a bathroom in it for their shop, which would be located on the Hale property. And then part of this money would be used to start the design work for the new health department. And so some of this money would be reimbursed by the state for the work on the health department. As far as nonprofits go, you have the $80,000 for the volunteer fire departments. Under the funding formula for 911, we see a decrease for next year. It's based on call volume. There's a base amount that both the city and county pay, and then there's a part of the funding formula that's based on call volume, and our part of it will go down about $4,200. The library has requested an increase so they can give their employees raises. That's the $94.50, but they've also included in their request $18,000 for a new camera system for both outside and inside the building. And with the traffic that the library has, that's something that they feel is necessary, their board feels is necessary for the security of the staff and the public at the library. ALPS has asked for $2,000 more, as has MATS. And then Safe Space. So a couple of years ago, Van Wolf appeared before you to talk. This was when CEASE stopped operating, and there was no shelter services provided in Hamlin County, and Safe Space filled that gap for us, and we appropriated the money that was going to CEASE to Safe Space. They've continued over the last couple of years of providing shelter services, and we haven't appropriated any money for that. So what's in the budget proposal is $8,000, which was the money we gave CEASE, which would go to Safe Space. Right now, their shelter is in I think it's in Jefferson City, I believe, and there's victims, domestic violence victims from Sevier, Hamlin, Jefferson, Granger, and Cocke County are housed at this shelter, and we're second on the list as far as the most nights that folks stay there. Sevier County has the most people and the most nights. We're second, followed by Jefferson, then Cocke, and then Granger. So we're proposing that the $8,000 that we did give CEASE, that it would go to Safe Space. There's also something we can look at, and Van Wolf of Safe Space mentioned it to me, and these other counties have implemented this. It's a fee. It's a fee that would be, it's called a victim's assistance assessment. It's a $45 fee for persons convicted of crimes with over a $500 fine. And so we could implement that and help offset some of these costs, and that's what these other counties have done.
So you say you Alex is a match?
Yes.
Elaborate on it?
Yes.
That's increase $2,000.
Yes.
That's increase what we're doing now?
Yes, we give them, it's less than $10,000, both of them.
With this increase?
It's right around that, yeah. It's right around 10 with this increase. Let's see, and then lastly, just in the general fund, what's not included in the general fund budget is a 25% raise requested by the Sheriff's Department across the board for all their folks. A new detective position requested by the sheriff, and so they'll make the pitch for that position next Tuesday. No, it's be a week from Thursday. And then revenue needed to fill the gap some in our health insurance plan. Right now, we're looking about $250,000, and it's not in the budget, but we think we can use some fund balance to shore the health insurance fund up, get it to about $1 million balance that the actuaries suggest that we have, and therefore we don't have to raise premiums. And then cost of living pay increase for employees. We don't have one in the budget right now. That's something that we're still working on, And we know that we have to pay our people more. We know that. It's just about how much do we pay more. And so we're still working with our pay consultant on that, finance department staff, and I are working on that. And so we'll present that at a later time, what we suggest, and then what it will cost and how we pay for it. Okay, next is the Sanitation Fund, what we used to call the Garbage Fund. This is a graph of the fund balance of sanitation. Years ago, back in the early 2000s, there was a tax increase. I think the tax rate for the Sanitation Fund, it was tripled, went from 9 cents to about 30 cents, and the fund was broke at that time, and it built a tremendous fund balance from that. And what we've been doing over the last several years is living off that fund balance. And so that's why you see in this graph how the fund balance declined. And then when the sales tax, the internet sales tax started benefiting us, then you saw it going the other direction. And that's how we've been able to build a fund balance. We expect to end this year with over $3 million in fund balance. And then in the Sanitation Fund, what we have in the fund is $350,000 of fund balance we would use to purchase land for the landfill. In the agreement, when the city and county joined forces to form the solid waste board, in that agreement, the city and county committed to buying any property that was needed to expand the landfill, and we're at that point. And the $350,000 that we would pay would be matched by the city, and that would buy about 30 acres and would help extend the life of the landfill, which is right now we don't have much time left in the landfill. So we've been working on this. The Solid Waste Board's been working on this for a while, and we're about ready to pull the trigger. And so this budget would include $350,000 for the new property. It also includes a new brush truck. Barry's requesting a new brush truck. Disposal fees will increase. The rate will increase from $38 a ton to $48 a ton. And that difference, that increase will pay for the financing of the expansion of the landfill. And so you'll see in debt service how that will go. I'll talk about that. So we'll see an increase in tipping fee rate charged by the landfill, and so we increased disposal fees by $40,000. Diesel fuel and gasoline, of course, we've increased that by $29,000. There's no new employees, but we do have the $2.50 per hour raise funded for a full year, which we didn't have last year. And there's also a $25,000 increase in repair of equipment and trucks, so for the parts. So we're looking at, we're estimating at the end of next fiscal year we'd have a fund balance of about $2.6 million, which is about 74% of the operating budget. Highway Fund. In the Highway Fund, we have about $1.2, almost $1.3 million for paving. Actually, it's split between two funds. We have $500,000 in gas tax money that we normally budget for paving. We have $380,000 in state aid money, which there's certain roads that qualify for projects that are paid through state aid, and so there's $380,000, and then $398,000 from the Highway Capital Projects Fund, which is Fund 176. We had it budgeted for this year, but it wasn't used, and so we're budgeting it again next year, or yes, next fiscal year for paving. Barry's also requesting a new 2-ton dump truck and another concrete saw He wants to, the dump truck replaces a truck that they have in service now, and then the concrete saw would help equip him with 2 crews that, one for the east side and one for the west side to patch with, and that they have all the equipment that they need to do that. He's also asking for 2 new employees that would be flagmen, and he's had some situations out in the field where his employees have come back and said, they almost got hit 2 or 3 times, and that they're concerned about their safety. So he's addressing that with a flagger for each crew. Gas or fuel, propane gas, diesel, gasoline, all increases, and then you'll also see the $2.50 raise funded for the full year. And this is the fund that the fund balance, if again every penny spent, the fund balance gets pretty low at $642,000.
Bill, do we have a way of getting a report to the increase? We've been doing this buying of extra trucks and equipment for a while. How much extra paving did we get out of it? And can that be reported during the budget process?
Well, we'll send that word to Barry. His budget hearing is next Tuesday, so he'll be here next Tuesday, and we'll ask him to bring that information. Now, from my understanding, Randy, is there's a certain amount of paving is done, or a certain amount of prep work is done by his crews. I'm talking 70% maybe, 80%, and then they contract out either 20, 30%, something like that. So they do a little of both, but we'll ask him to bring that. Okay, the next chart is our debt service fund. And debt service fund balance, again, by plan and by design, its fund balance is at $13 million. It'll finish this year, we anticipate, was a $13 million balance. And next year, we start using it to start paying on the debt. And we'll do that for about 3 years. And then we will have paid off the E4A bonds, the bonds from the 2000, be the ones that were issued about 25 years ago. And we'll pay those off, and then our revenue and our payments will equal, and we'll start building capacity in about, I think it's about 8 years in 2030. So all the debt for the schools and the Justice Center is issued now, and so there won't be any more debt for those projects. The Solid Waste Board will come and ask for the county to issue debt to help finance the expansion of the landfill. Now, the way that would work is we would issue the debt with an agreement with the city of Morristown that they would be responsible for part of it too. They'd be, we would share the responsibility. I mean, technically, we're the bond issuers, and it would be based on our taxing authority, but we'd have an agreement with the city of Morristown that they would back half of it, half of the revenue needed to pay the bonds off, and then the Solid Waste Board, and we've done this before in the last expansion. The Solid Waste Board would sign a commitment, and they would basically pay the county the money that's needed to make the bond payments. And we did that with the last expansion. And so, and right now the conversation's around $12.5 million, but there's no formal request yet for that. Let's see. All right, so as far as debt service goes, we'll use about $1.5 million of fund balance, and so we'll end next year with about $11.5 million in fund balance for debt service. And then Then schools, and our maintenance of effort. We're getting ready to enter a transition in funding of schools. This is the last year of the BEP. 22-23 is the last year of the BEP. From what I understand, the school system has received between $700,000 and $800,000 new dollars from the state under the BEP. And then next year, in 23-24, the information that I've received and the school system has received is the school system will receive about $12 million new dollars for education. And so, so in our maintenance of effort, during the first 4 years of the new formula, does not have to increase. And so, and then starting with year 5, there's a formula for local governments in their maintenance of effort, and they have to supply so much of a percentage of the funding for schools in year 5. But as far as maintenance of effort now, we're at $27,356,092, and this chart kind of shows you a little bit about what our maintenance of effort has done over the last few years, and just a steady increase, nothing dramatic, just a steady increase for funding as the state has picked up more funding for education over the past several years. Just in summary, inflation and supply chain issues are having an impact on our budget. We're using reserve funds in the general fund to make capital purchases. Also, we're doing that as well in the garbage fund as we buy the land and the new brush truck. There's 3 new positions in this budget. One in recovery court, which a state grant covers 2/3 of it, and then the 2 positions in the highway budget. And then the highway budget has about $1.2 million in paving and the new truck and the new saw. And the unknowns right now, as I stand before you now, is what kind of pay increase that we'll give our employees, and then how we'll fund the health insurance and get it back to where it needs to be. We've had a year of high claims, and so we'll need to fill a gap there. And we've got some ideas, and we'll present those at a later date. Mr. Chairman, that's all I've got right now. Well, I take that back. Got one more thing. The schedule is next on the 24th. A week from today will be sanitation and highway, and we'll present the debt service budget and the annual debt report. She'll do both of those next Tuesday. Then a week from Thursday will be the Sheriff's Department budget and the revenues, and we'll present the revenues to the general fund. Then on the 31st, we'll go through the rest of the general fund departments, and then the school system will present on the 2nd and deliberations on the 7th. And then we'll kind of wrap things up on the 9th and 13th and make a recommendation to the full commission. And our goal is, and the way we've got it scheduled, is that we would adopt a budget by the end of June. So,
Well, what is our growth?
growth as far as
Not even TV, what is it, our growth is, we want like 536, 563.
in all revenue or just property tax? Gosh.
That's what the schools, they always look at that, what our growth, they ask for our growth.
Well, we changed the way that we've, I guess, determined school funding a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And what we asked them to do is come to us with their request, and then there's the maintenance of effort. And then any growth we had, let's say if it was in property tax or if it was in sales tax, it wouldn't automatically go to schools. You know, back years ago, it was their growth money. You know, if a penny on the property taxing generated $10,000 more dollars, okay, then that was theirs, and they kind of laid claim to it. we don't do it that way anymore. And the way,
Year before last, Perry asked that, whatever I wrote, and he asked for more money from the county, and he asked for that growth.
and he
563,000, I think.
now 3 years ago, your first budget, this commission's first budget, I think they got close to that. The last two, it's been $200,000. Well, last year, the year we're in now, was 200 to maintenance of effort, and then the one-time money too, as well, both.
Question.
Yes, ma'am?
On the, what Barry asked for, the increase, is that what help the county when you pick up the trash, not just trash, but junk? I know he's got to ask for a brush truck,
Right.
but
I think he'll have to answer that question. And, but drivers, drivers are the issue. And from what I understand, and Danny, you could correct me, is the pay increases have helped, you know, keep, but if if they're short anybody, then they pull them off the brush trucks and put them on the garbage trucks. So.
Mayor, I have a question. Couple things on the education. I know it's premature. We've not heard their presentation, but with the idea of this new funding, has there been a conversation yet? And again, maybe this is all premature, but with knowing what they're going to possibly get next year, does that affect what we do this year for 'em? Do you see that being?
You want my opinion?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it does.
I mean, next year, it seems that they're going to have a windfall, and we're in a crunch year possibly with a
I
lot
think we take that into consideration, yes. Yes.
Okay. That said, do we have any thoughts about the sheriff's department's request? Do we wait for their presentation? I just,
Oh, yeah.
They-
I mean, you hear their presentation. Yeah.
right. I'm sure there's some need there, and we know there's need with
There-
pay increases.
There is.
Yes.
There's especially from the research that we've done so far with corrections officers and with road officers and detectives as well, there's a need for some pay adjustments. And we did that, what, a year and a half ago,
Mhm.
made some adjustments, but we're still not where we need to be.
Okay.
And then one thing too is with law enforcement specifically is we're competing against other agencies who pay more and attract our people that we've invested thousands of dollars in training in. And so if they plan on raising their pay, we've got to raise our pay
Right.
for them to be competitive. We've
Right.
got to.
And it's my understanding they are down a detective position, it's just something we may need to look at.
That's in their request.
Right. Okay.
Will we have the information on what the other agencies are increasing their fees before we make decisions?
Well, our biggest competition
Yeah.
is City of Morristown.
Yeah, right.
And their pay, they're going, in their budget that was presented last Friday, their increased pay is 5%.
5%.
Well, it used to, we used to get a nonprofit, we used to get that one,
We've got those in the office, yes. If any of them you want to see, we'll get them to you. Okay.
Do we have any more questions or comments?
I've got one question. It seems like in the last couple of years, and I know some things are, you can't look into the future and see your needs. They kind of spring up. I know it happens with Barry. But the sheriff's department, I think was it last year, year before last? Seemed like we just finished wrapping up the budget, approved everything, and then within a couple of months, they came back with two requests, I think, what was it, the stun guns, and then later on, a little something else. You, or, you remember
The tasers?
the tasers, yeah. Yeah, something anyway. I mean, and if they need them, that's fine. I'm not, don't have any heartburn whatsoever about that at all. But it was just right after the budget, seemed like it was just boom, and then they came back in with another,
Well, now, I don't trust my memory very,
I
okay.
don't trust mine. I mean,
But I'm, usually things like that, they're in the budget, and then we bid them out, and they may have come with the bid.
I'm not sure that that was right, I mean, in this case, but it could have been, but, I mean, just encourage them to get them in here and let us
Right.
take a look at them.
Any other comments? We have the meetings on Thursday night, and the commission notebooks are in the cart. If you could take those, that'll keep from having to drag them back and forth. And then budget notebooks can be kept in the cart. If that's what they want to do. But take them home and read them.
One thing too, Mr. Chairman, is if you guys would, gal, is remember Joe Huntsman in your prayers. He's at Heritage, and Gene Huntsman said last night he has no knee. His device that was his knee replacement has been taken out and will be replaced later. So,
He has an infection in the knee, is that
yeah,
correct?
he has an infection.
Yeah, what you're saying.
So, if you'll remember Joe.
If there's no more, we call this meeting adjourned.